This week I'm answering a question from Dave. It's a hypothetical question, but it's one I actually get a lot. And it's here's what it is. It's about surveillance, and when a police officer, if a police officer approaches you while you're on surveillance, how much can you say? How much should you say? And especially if the officer pushes you for more and more information. Hi, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. I'm the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that, including the Investigator's Ultimate Guide to Surveillance. I do answer this question in there completely and fully, but I'll cover it here now. The idea is, if a police officer approaches you while you're on surveillance, and most of the time this would happen out of a suspicious person's report. Someone has looked out their window, decided that and they call the cops on you, right? Totally legitimate. I got no problems with the citizen doing that. I got no problems with the police showing up. The police, have to say it politely when you're talking to them. But the idea is, if they're just really aggressive or over aggressive, and specifically on who you're watching. So, officer will come out, look, all your basic traffic stop things apply for you as a citizen, even though it's technically not a traffic stop. You're sitting there stationary, right? Roll down the window, have your hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2. Don't take them off unless the officer tells you you can. Look, for those of us who use tinted window vehicles, and you should be using a tinted window vehicle, as I discuss in my course, I roll down all the windows that can roll down, and I turn on the dome light, especially if it's at night, so the officer can clearly see into the vehicle. I'm just trying to make things, I'm letting him know, I'm signaling I'm not a problem, I'm not hiding anything from you. So the officer would, check with you, say, I'm licensed private investigator, I'm working on a surveillance. And to me, that's usually it. I mean, the one thing you'll sometimes get is, that's neat, are you hiring? I mean, that's way more common than the hypothetical question of the officer that's overly aggressive about this. And I've just never had in real life the officer be overly aggressive. They want to know what you're doing out there or who. I just say it's a civil matter. Now, for police officers, they're trained that they're doing obviously criminal matters. And they will use the phrase, this is a civil matter, when they're dealing with something like a restaurant dispute on whether someone paid their meal or not, that type of thing. If it's not clearly a theft that they're trying to, that they're going to have to enforce the criminal law side of it, they will say, if it's a dispute about the amount or something like that, a lot of times they'll just say, this is a civil matter. This is not something I can help you with. So they have been trained and trained themselves that that's not what they deal with. They don't deal with civil matters. And when I say to an officer, and I've had to say this, it's a civil matter, they just understand that. If they want me to move, absolutely move. There's no question about it. I'll move. And that's just the way it's going to be. I've just never had one get to the point where it's threatening to arrest me because I won't tell him who I'm watching. I don't believe that happens in the real world. If it does, it doesn't happen enough that I'm worried about it. I will say this, and this is nothing bad against the police. I love the cops. They come out. They help us. I get that. I don't want to be messed with anymore. Anybody else wants to be messed with, but thank God they're there, because there are bad people doing bad things. Here's the thing, though. On the street, you will always lose if you confront an officer. And I don't mean physically, but it doesn't matter how right you are, how correct you are. Well, officer, this is a public street. I'm a taxpayer. I'm entitled to be here. Yes, all of that is true. You are 100% right, and you will lose on the street every time with that officer. You may win later. You may win in court. It may even be laughable when it gets to court. But you will lose going up against a cop every single time on the street. It's never jammed me up. I've never had that problem, but I also understand I'm not going to push it that far, even when I'm right. I'm not going to bring up the state's statutes on private investigation or public access. You're never going to convince an officer by citing some kind of law. Just forget about it. And I feel silly that I even have to go this far and explain it, but Some people think that they're going to be able to talk the officer into something, and that's not going to happen ever. Dave, I hope that answers your question thoroughly. I don't think you're going to run into that problem. You will have to interact with police officers sometimes when you're on surveillance, just the way it goes. Be polite, be respectful, keep things safe. You won't have any problems. If the worst comes to worst, you're going to have to come back another day. If you have any experience dealing with officers on surveillance and problems that you've had, or that, you can add to the narrative that it doesn't really have a problem. Things go smoothly most of the time. Whatever your experience, drop it into the comments. I would love to hear about it. In the meantime, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.